Usually when YouTubers have a title or thumbnail that says massive news or huge updates, usually when they do that, they're most likely exaggerating. They heard a rumor or they caught a whiff of something and they end up spending about 10 minutes talking about basically nothing until they finally get to the point, which wasn't really that big of a deal to begin with. But that's actually not the case for this video because, well, we actually do have some pretty big substantial news coming in about a week for Helldivers 2. We have a new Warbond, which is much different than the Warbonds that we're used to. And we also have a promise of a balance update that the players have been asking about for a long time. And that's not even mentioning this freaking black hole that's definitely going to result in something bad happening eventually, right? Either way, there's a lot of stuff bubbling up with Helldivers 2, and it's especially exciting after a bit of a low period. So, Dr. Pooplove here, and let's get right into it. Now, the first thing I want to do is break down what we've seen with this Warbond, the Viper Commandos Warbond. And one of the biggest things to expect with this Warbond are new armor sets, which are pretty freaking sick looking. And these are the first armor sets in the game that actually show your exposed skin. They show your arms, and dang, are these Helldivers ripped. And there's even a variety of skin tones that you can also have. Now, beyond just the cosmetics of these new armors is the fact that we are finally getting a new armor passive. These armor sets are going to have the passive called the Peak Physique, which improves melee damage and weapon handling. And I think that's going to be pretty good for using the Jar Dominator or the Eruptor, because both those guns have some pretty heavy handling. Now there's a heavy armor set called the Twig Snapper and a really cool light armor set called the Predator, which has you donning a red beret. Pretty freaking awesome. And what you might notice is that there's only 2 armor sets this time. We're usually used to 3, and I'll talk about this later, but they are definitely making some changes to what we are used to with this Warbond. Now the next thing I want to talk about is the new gun. It's the AR-23A Liberator Carbine, and this is going to be a part of the Liberator family, and apparently it's going to have a lot of recoil but some pretty tight handling. And the way it's described in the blog post is it's going to be kind of more of a close range spray and pray type weapon. Now this is going to be the only primary that shows up in this Warbond, and I have to say I think a lot is riding on this one, especially because people have been pretty underwhelmed by the primaries that we have seen, and this is the only one. I think they're going to have to make sure to deliver with this one, and hopefully they will. I have heard from the CEO that they are looking into assault rifles in particular and trying to buff that weapon category, so hopefully that impacts this gun as well. There's also the Bushwhacker, which is basically a sidearm shotgun or kind of like a shorty for my factions friends, and it's also triple barrel, and apparently it's got some fire modes which will allow you to shoot them one at a time or all 3 bullets at once. Cool thing here is I think a lot of people have been using shotguns because they're very viable in this game, and this is kind of allowing you to have one as a secondary, so you can also have something with a little more variety as your primary. Another thing to mention here is there are some new cosmetic patterns. They're vehicle patterns, and this is actually going to show up on a new menu for you, where in this case you get some kind of camo skins for your exosuit, for your shuttle, and for your hellpod. As usual, there's also a new booster, which is going to give your stims an added bonus of boosting your movement speed and reducing the damage you take for a short amount of time. So this should be a pretty good booster for getting out of those dicey situations and living to fight another day. Finally, something super notable here is the throwing knife, which is actually acting in your throwable slot in this case. Honestly, I wasn't expecting this. I thought they were all going to be some sort of bombs in this slot, but being able to have throwing knives is going to be pretty cool. It's also going to be interesting because as they display in the trailer, you can kind of use this as stealth, and hopefully you can end up taking out single target enemies from afar without alerting anyone else. And another cool thing might be is if you are able to pick these back up off the ground, that would be a cool new advantage for these throwables. Now, all of this is pretty cool, but I think one of the most exciting things about this Warbond is what the devs devs have said that they are going to be doing with Warbonds moving forward. So let's discuss. And so they say that they've heard our feedback on the Warbonds and they want them to be a little bit more potent. And so they're going to change their approach. Firstly, they're going to slow down the pace at which the Warbonds come out, which is going to give them more time to create high quality Warbonds. Give them more time to polish, make sure those weapons are balanced before they actually give them to us. They're also changing around the kind of things that you get from the Warbonds. Of course, we see some new cosmetics in here. And again, having less guns to deal with is going to allow them to make each one something unique and special for it. And they're also saying that they're going to try to make these Warbonds actually fit the theme this time. The Polar Patriots Warbond, we know, didn't have a whole lot of things that made it seem wintry or snow-like. And they also said that they're going to be focusing on quality over quantity in this case. And honestly, this is a bit of a breath of fresh air. It seems that Arrowhead is really going to be trying to deliver something that is worth us experiencing with each one of these Warbonds going forward. Now, hopefully this actually does set the tone and has a lot of things that we can be excited for. So far, it looks pretty exciting. The exception maybe is I don't know how they're going to make the assault rifle be that enticing. There's a lot riding on that, but regardless, giving these devs more time to give us more quality drops is just going to be better. Now, I know some people are going to maybe be a little bit upset, like, hey, we used to get 3 primaries, now we're only getting 1, but honestly, when those 3 primaries are all pretty underwhelming or seem just like slight variations of other guns that already exist, it really isn't worth it to me. I would much rather them give us one good gun that actually fills a niche, that actually feels potent, feels like it's going to serve a useful function and feel unique from other things we've received. Now, the other thing here is, yes, we are getting a brand new Warbond next week, but we're also expecting a balance patch. They've said that they're planning to give it to us in the 2nd week of June, which is supposed to be next week. And so I am guessing with the release of this Warbond, we're also going to be getting a ton of balance updates. Now, the devs have heard our feedback, things like weapons not feeling special, feeling underpowered a lot. And it seems like the devs are ready to address that. It seems like they feel that a lot of it has to do with time to kill. And so I expect that we're probably going to be getting a lot of good changes to the game that is ultimately going to make the whole entire game feel a lot more fresh. That's my hope, at least. We just have a little bit of time before all of this ends up happening, and so I'm super excited. Of course, there's also something looming, which I don't know if we're going to hear about this next week, but we did just destroy the planet of Meridia, and there's this huge freaking black hole just kind of hanging out there, and I think we're going to see some consequences of that soon. Potentially this is going to tie into the Illuminate, which we know is coming eventually. But what do you think about all this? Are you excited for these new changes? Do you think this is going to really revive Helldivers, bring a lot of the players back? And do you think that this is going to move everything in the right direction? Let me know in the comments, and I want to say a special thank you to my YouTube members for joining the Bowel Movement. But otherwise, so long, Pooper Troopers.